You hear us? Sherry? Okay. You all ready?
I want to apologize to everybody for that delay.
I don't know why I'm looking at them and giving them thumbs up.
I think they can see you too.
Yeah.
We might be on camera as well. I don't know.
Green, and that's when.
All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Bonner Springs Planning Commission regular meeting for February 25th, 2025. I call the regular meeting to order at 6:39. At this time, will the Community Development Director, please take roll?
All right. Let's see. Mr. Parika. Mr. Clark. And Ms. Neff. Here. Mr. Zepps.
Here.
Mr. Bombardier. Mr. Gebauer.
Here.
Okay. Let the record show that Mr. Cruz and Mr. Mesmer are absent today.
On to the consent agenda. Agenda item number 2 is the approval of the minutes of the January 21st, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any comments or corrections? All right. At this time, I'll call for a motion to.
I move we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Agenda item number 3, unfinished business, none at this time. New business, agenda item number 4, the replat FP0125. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yeah. The property is currently zoned as general residential. It has 2 residential structures upon it, the principal structure and an accessory dwelling unit. This replat will place those 2 structures within their own lots with 1 lot remaining that can be constructed upon in the future. The proposed replat will combine several older lots of the Grandview subdivision of Saratoga Park into 3 lots, allowing for the potential construction of that new single-family residence. The lots are as follows. They're lots 1 through 8 of Block 4 of the Grandview subdivision of Saratoga Park. The replat will name these lots as Willard's Way. The proposed replat will dedicate additional right-of-way along South 138th Street for future improvements. And the proposed replat will not change any lots outside of that area. You all have a rendering of the lot layout. It has been reviewed by all parties and should be ready for approval. The applicant and representative are here if you guys have any questions.
This time, are there any questions for staff? Are there any questions for the applicant? Nope. All right. At this time, it's the applicant.
Yeah,
We're not doing a
it's
hearing
pretty
on this one,
simple. They're the way they face now currently. They both
Okay.
the 2 lots exist and exit out on 138th. The new one will go to Willard. It's nothing out of the ordinary or nothing that wouldn't be seen normally. So
Okay, we're not doing a hearing on this one, are we?
Nope.
no,
It
it's not
just
a
needs a
public
motion.
hearing.
I move we approve the agenda item as written with staff stipulations.
Is there a second? Okay. This time, is there any discussion amongst the planning commission?
It's got dry, if nobody else has an objection to it.
Nope.
You guys good? Okay.
At this time, we have a roll call vote then?
Sure. Mr. Zepps?
Yes.
Mr. Bombardier? Yes. Mr. Clark? Yes. Mr. Gebauer? Oh, got you early. Mr. Gebauer, chair, sorry. Ms. Neff? And Mr. Parika? Motion passes.
This will proceed to the city council meeting, March 10th then?
Yes, sir, it will.
Excellent.
Give me 1 second if you would. So we're good here. Recommended approval of city council. It'll go in front of them next month for final approval. Okay? Thank you. All right. Okay.
Agenda item number 5 is the public hearing for the special use permit SUP 0125. Could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, sir. So the subject property is located at 1800 South 121st Street and has also an address of 800 South 118th. They abut the Boy Scouts of America Camp Nash to the east, some vacant light industrial ground, and some single-family residential to the west, and large lot residential to the north. The city's Unified Development Ordinance, Section 2.03B, states that the purpose for this section is to provide a process for reviewing and approving special use permits when required by the table of allowed uses as established in Section 205. Uses requiring a special use permit are dissimilar to those uses permitted within the given zoning district, or uses in which the product, process, mode of operation, or nature of the use may prove detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of the surrounding built and natural environment. Special uses can allow for deviations from the approved Unified Development Ordinance by placing more stringent requirements upon them and upon recommendation by the Planning Commission and approval by the governing body. The area in question has been utilized as a mining operation for many, many years and would continue its operation with the approval of this special use permit. There is a request from the applicant that the lowest elevation of the quarry be increased to a depth of 735 feet above mean sea level from the existing limit of 820 feet. The explanation for this request was provided in the applicant's renewal cover letter, which is included in your packet, and it was dated January 25th, 2025. APAC is further requesting that underground mining below the requested 735 is allowed to occur, though no specific depth was provided at that time. Test drilling conducted around the site has indicated there is more high-quality material below the layer of lane shale that runs throughout the site. In the special use permit renewal letter provided by the applicant, it is explained as mining of this rock strata would have the benefit of providing long-term resources for the surrounding communities. Mining below ground reduces blasting concerns since the rock is much deeper and the blasting shots are much smaller, creating less noise and vibration for the surrounding community. Underground mining would not affect the above specified reclamation of the surface mine. Oops, that's not in paragraph 2. I apologize. Oh, that was in their letter to you guys. I'm so sorry. I got confused there. So in their paragraph, they talked about their reclamation process. That's been laid out since the beginning of the mine operation there, back in the at least early '93. So they're wanting to mine underground as well as go deeper in their existing, I'll call it a pit. I don't know that it's necessarily a pit, but in their area. The typical post-mining uses and reclamation of the underground operations would include the potential for underground storage, underground businesses, and office spaces similar to something like Hunt Midwest, Subtropolis, and at Park College. There's also some out towards Linwood, but they're more cold storage. But their request is to surface mine to the 735 and then go below that by subsurface mining in more or less a cave-type setting. The applicant and their representatives are here, and that is basically what I have, sir.
Before we go any further, just so it's on record, I will be recusing myself from this one since my property probably shares one of the biggest property lines with this one.
Thank you. At this time, call for a motion to open the public hearing. All right.
Nick?
Then public hearing, so you're calling for, yeah, I don't think we need a
Motion
second
to
for
start?
this. Yeah. And so at this time, the public hearing is open at 6:48 p.m. So, all right. Yep. All right, at this time, I'll call for any member of the public that wishes to speak in favor of this item. Mr. Zeps, please state your name
So,
and address.
Paul Zeps, 533 McGrantwood Street.
Wait. You're not speaking in favor, are you?
Yes, I am.
you are?
He just
Okay.
called for in favor.
Okay.
I know it surprises you, but,
Okay.
yeah, so to be perfectly clear, I am speaking in favor of maintaining or reissuing the special use permit. Quite simply, there are people I like and I don't like people, and having a quarry on most of my property line gives me a moat and a mountain that keeps Kansas City out of my backyard. With that, could you please hit hover 1, please? Oh, and for the record, as we're doing this, I have had no communications per Kansas Open Meetings Act with any of the staff members, commissioners, or otherwise. Nobody has any idea what I'm going to say or do because there's been no contact.
You won't be able to see his PowerPoint. I'm sorry for that.
And if you could turn the volume up, please.
I see it moving, but I didn't see.
Try your system volume.
Is there volume on your laptop?
Maybe put it on the microphone so you can hear it over the speakers. Okay. Flashing lights are a CH-47 heavy lift helicopter. That. It's also actually losing some of its impact because we don't have the proper speakers here. That as well. Okay. Since I don't have the full volume, I'll go ahead and if you could bring the PowerPoint presentation up yet, and you can just kill that.
I'll have to stop it, Larissa.
There we go. Okay, and if you could go to the first slide, please. What the heck? That's not the right one. Yeah, there's a PowerPoint presentation in there. Okay, so while they're doing this, so my property, well, I don't have any of my pictures. So McGrantwood Street, essentially, as you come into the, yeah, that's not the right PowerPoint presentation. As you come into the mine, there's a, you kind of come straight back and then it goes down, gets dug out, comes all the way back up, levels out, comes down. And the bottom line of what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask the Planning Commission for 2 additional stipulations on the special use permit. The first one is pretty straightforward. You don't need a PowerPoint presentation for that, and that is quite simply to ask that you consider adding a stipulation wherein the owners of the special use permit are required to give 48 hours advance notice for any rail operations that are going to block Highway 32. That needs to be posted, that it needs to be posted openly on a website that everybody can get to. That's just good neighbor. If you're going to shut down the major artery in the area, being a good neighbor says, hey, listen, just let us know you're going to do it so we can make alternate plans. The second one has to do with why I just played a video of a CH-47 that, unfortunately, since I don't have my videos, I got to talk through it. But by accessing the air traffic control pictures for the local area and the local terminal area charts for all the aviation, bottom line is the seventh of the 150, Bravo Company 7th 158th Heavy Lift Aviation Battalion, Army Reserve out of New Century, conducts recurring, scheduled, and authorized airlift operations in and out of the quarry. That sound you just heard goes on for an hour and a half, well past 9:30 at night. And you missed the impact of what a CH-47 hovering on one of my other slides, which is 700 feet from my house at eye level. They hover right at the top of the tree line behind the hill. They do sling loads, and the map that I've got it shows an airstrip or something that looks like an airstrip back there. And I also have the air traffic control ADS-B, which is the anti-collision monitoring systems that all aircraft have, shows them hovering about 700 feet from my house, about 50 feet AGL, above ground level, depending on if you count from the airstrip below it or the top of the mountain. What I'm asking for, to be upfront, and then I'll continue with my documentation to support my position, is that as part of the special use permit, all airfield, aerodrome, heliport, aerial training, airborne training, helicopter training, sling load training, and any other kind of aerial operations that they are running out of what essentially is an illegal airport be absolutely prohibited. Now here's why. And again, I have on my PowerPoint, I've got all of the citations from the FAR AIM, which, by the way, I'm a pilot, and I'm also a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel with 30 years in the Army, and I have been in and out of more CH-47s than I care to in more places than. Now, the FAR AIM is the Federal Aviation Regulations Airman's Instruction Manual, and it is the Bible for the FAA that defines, it is the definition of the rules for all phases, kinds, and flights of operations, airfield operations, etc. What it says, and I'm not going to quote you all the quotes and chapters and verse, excuse me. What it says is minimum safe altitude for aircraft operation is 1,000 feet above, for aircraft operation over dwellings or populated areas is 1,000 feet vertical, 2,000 feet horizontal. Now, the thing you have to understand about FAR AIM is the FAA writes regulations very broadly to give the airmen a lot of latitude to be able to conduct aerial operations. And so what it says is and this is in uncontrolled airspace, okay? One of the other pictures I have up there is the terminal area chart for the Kansas City International Area, which shows that anything up to 2,000 feet over Bonner Springs is what's called Class Echo airspace. It's not uncontrolled, it's just controlled by basic regulations, okay? And so what I'm quoting you is the basic regulations for flight outside of controlled space in Charlie or Bravo. And it says, aircraft must be operated for minimum safe altitude to such an altitude wherein if the loss of an engine or mechanical failure allows the aircraft to be brought down in a controlled crash away from the dwellings or populated spaces. 1,000 feet vertical, 2,000 feet horizontal, three statute miles away from clouds. Helicopters have a special exemption. Because they're more maneuverable, it's 500 feet above structures. However, the FAR AIM regulations specifically in two different places state noise considerations. Okay, and I've got it all printed out on my thing that gives you chapter and verse. Unfortunately, I can't pull it up, so you have to kind of trust me. But in two different places where it specifically gives exceptions under the CFRs for helicopter operations, minimum safe altitude over dwellings or populated places is 500 feet or 500 feet with the specific stipulation of noise constraints. Okay, and it goes a lot deeper into that, but you can see where I'm starting to go with this. Okay, on a regular interval, and so why am I talking to the Corps about Army aviation operations? Okay, now I'd call you back to what I said earlier, where I said these are scheduled, approved, and recurring. So the FAR AIM also outlines what equals an airport. Okay, and if you have scheduled operations, it's anything that any aircraft carrying 9 or more passengers for scheduled aerial operations. For unscheduled aerial operations, it's any aircraft carrying 31 people or more, and that's so that you have a little more leeway on like remote airfields. These are scheduled, these are recurring, and these are approved. And so what that means is that a CH-47 carries 31 fully combat-loaded soldiers. 33 combat-loaded soldiers, 2 more than the minimum, and that's fully rucked up, front to back, sitting on the deck or in the sling seats. So we're over the 31 right there, scheduled. So this is an Army Reserve unit. It is completely and totally controlled by budget. And when you're talking an aviation unit, blade hours are the unit of measurement. Every single second that a blade is spinning on one of those helicopters is tracked down to the most minuscule thing. Break, break. 101st Airborne out of Fort Campbell runs a lot of helicopters. Just so happens that I have my boss is a retired colonel who's a CH-47 pilot who flew out of there. It is very common for them to lease farmland around Fort Campbell so that they can conduct aerial operations like this. And so you take that and you take the fact that to conduct any kind of aviation operation where you're hovering a CH-47 50-foot AGL for an hour and a half, which is how long that tape was going to go, if they were to do that without approval of the quarry, it would be about illegal as you can get for FAR aims, for civil law, for tort law, and for criminal law. They would be trespassing. They would be breaking a book this thick of regulations. And so the quarry has approved this. They are helping schedule it because those schedules are tight. I don't know if they're receiving compensation for that, and that gets to the special use permit. The special use permit covers mining. It does not cover conducting aerial operations. It does not cover subletting any of the property for lease or rent to conduct aerial operations or anything at all. It does not allow for running an airport, which is essentially, without all the fancy language, what's happening. And the flight operations are not being conducted safely. My family's been on the mountain for 70 years, okay, mine or my wife's. And as long as we've lived there for 7 years, these CH-47s will come over my house close enough that I can see the crew chief's eye color, okay? So 100 feet AGL. Unfortunately, I can't give you laser rangefinder measurements for exactly what the altitude is. All I have is the ADS-B to go off of, which reports departures from their airfield at 700 feet MSL, okay? That puts them about 50 feet above ground level. MSL is sea level, okay? And I can track them by ADS-B. It's rough because it's what the systems are reporting, but to fire a laser rangefinder at night at a pilot under nods is like turning on a spotlight, and it's a federal violation of law, and it's just stupid. So I can't laser the guys to tell you exactly to the foot how tall they are, but trust me, they're coming over my house at 200 AGL tops, and that's being generous. And so, hopefully I really wish I had my graphics. I can give you the graphics later. I don't know why they didn't transfer. What's that?
There was no PowerPoint.
There was?
There was
Okay.
some videos and some other stuff.
Yeah, it didn't transfer. I apologize for that. My old man used to say documentation is your salvation. And so I had planned on coming here with all the videos and everything, but I've given you the meat of it. And in conclusion, what I am asking the Planning Commission to consider is 2 addendums to the special use permit conditions, I guess would be the proper term. Number 1, publicly posting on a website 48 hours in advance any rail operations that are going to cut the traffic on 32. Number 2, that the special use permit specifically prohibit all aerial, heliborne, airport, aerial training, and whatever verbiage you want to add into that to say no more aerial operations out of that thing at all. And on my slide, what I had was recommended. I hate the word punishment, but recommended consequences for violations. And my recommended for violations of the aerial one is the first violation, they suspend the permit for 7 days. Second violation, permit's gone. And for the rail ops, doesn't need to be it's not as serious. So, first violation, 24 hours, and that's all from the validation of the violation by any Bonner Springs city authority. Okay, so advance notice of the rail operations, 48 hours notice on a website. No more airborne, heliborne training, flight ops, airport ops, or other. That's what I'm requesting. Subject to your questions, that concludes.
Anybody have any questions?
That's good.
Mark, is the PowerPoint something we can get at a later date?
I mean, we could, but it's not on his drive, so I could email it out to everybody. But yeah,
Do you have it shared
PowerPoint.
somewhere else, Paul?
It's at my house.
Okay. Well, at this time, is anyone else wanting to speak in favor? You would approach the microphone, turn it on, state your name and address.
Yeah. My name is Paul Barrett. I'm with Union Bank and Trust, 309 Oak Street, right across the street. I'm also on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, currently serving as treasurer, and have been in that capacity or that role for, the last 6 years or so. APAC is owned by CRH, and correct me if I'm wrong, and another one of the entities is Holiday Sand and Stone. That company has been a fixture in Bonner for many decades. I know a number of people that were owners at one time, employed there. Some still are employed there and live here too. So from the Chamber's perspective, they're a Chamber member, and we like to support local businesses that we think are doing good things in our community. From a financial perspective, they are our largest sponsor of Tiblo Days. And as you may or may not know, the Chamber is charged with coordinating Tiblo Days on behalf of the city or in conjunction with the city. So our goal is to always make that a bigger and better event each year, drawing in more people so they can see our city, they can see what it has to offer, come back later, et cetera. And we would not have been successful without companies like Holiday Sand and Stone. And again, I know they're not APAC, but they're sister companies, and we treat them as one and the same. They also support our golf tournament. They are supporters of our annual banquet. They have a couple tables for our banquet this Friday. Their employees are involved in the community. The Chamber president is an employee of Holiday Sand and Stone. They support our golf tournament, which benefits the kids in the school district. I'm also on the USD 204 Education Foundation Golf Committee. They support that as well. So again, I'd like to have businesses in our community that are good partners, both with the community and the other businesses. So I would recommend the extension or renewal of the special use permit, giving consideration of what Paul Zeps just said. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor at this time? All right. One moment, Larry and Sherry.
It's a photo of the helicopter.
I've got a picture of the ATC picture, but
Okay.
I can send you the PowerPoint slides. You'll get it all.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. At this time, would anyone like to speak against this issue? If you would approach the microphone, state your name and address, please.
My name is Julia Parker, and I live at 12520 Kansas Avenue in Bonner Springs, Kansas. And I have previously sent documentation to the city documenting damage that has occurred at my home at 12520 Kansas Avenue. We purchased our home in December of 2018. We have in our possession a home inspection that did not notate any significant foundation issues. In fact, it notated that there were no significant structural issues noted in our home inspection. Shortly after, in early of 2019, we started experiencing larger blasting at our home that was contributing to damage of our home. We noticed that our doors were no longer closing. We noticed that our staircase was twisting around its foundation. And when we contacted 2 separate independent foundation repair companies, as well as structural engineering with Apex Structural Engineers, to do an evaluation of our home, it was found that we had significant damage above and beyond what would be normal wear and tear. We don't have any drainage issues with our home. We addressed these with the quarry. They stated that their opinion was, hey, you know what? This area has a lot of clay. It's going to contribute to expansion and contraction of ground. We're within legal rights within the Bureau of Mines of our blasting. We'll put a seismograph in our yard and show you that, hey, we're within legal rights. Here's the deal, though. For whatever reason, and the quarry did share with us that, yes, they have pushed further into that north quadrant, which is directly across the street from our home. Our home was built in 1909, about the same time as the inception of the quarry. So it's lasted for over 100 years, structurally sound. And in the course of 4 years, we had to invest over $43,000 to put over 25 piers surrounding our property to correct the deficits of foundation deterioration that happened extremely rapidly. So in your emails, hopefully, or in documentation, you will find 2 separate independent foundation repair companies' evaluation of our structural foundation problems. They are above and beyond normal wear and tear. They are opposing directionality, which is extremely abnormal, unless there is a force acting outside of the home, like an explosion, that would cause such damage. And I can show you pictures of our home. I tried to address it with the quarry directly. I've spoken with multiple personnel at the quarry. They've been very kind about it, but they've also said, hey, it's not our responsibility. I promise you that's not impossible. I'm like, well, the impossible is happening to our home. And that doesn't make sense because it's been here for over 100 years. So you're telling me that suddenly it's just splitting front to back and side to side. I've been sitting inside my home when they have blasted, and it shakes the entire home. It's not just a tremor. It startles my children. It startles my husband, who happens to be a combat veteran. That's super fun. I did arrange with the quarry to start texting the neighbors to give us heads up when they're going to blast. That's been very helpful. But also, the fact of the matter is, 100 years ago, they were using different equipment. And the mining codes are maybe from the 1970s. Different equipment, different regulations. You know, they're saying, well, it shouldn't be impacting, soft structures like your drywall and things like that. Everything else should be fine, but it is, okay? Our foundation is literally cracked in half. And so we've had to expend a ton of money to fix our home. I'm not the only one on our street either. Sherry Altieri, 4 houses up from me, just to the, east and north of Walmart. Her home has experienced severe cracking and foundation deterioration. And I have other neighbors here that will discuss the fact that, yes, those of us on Kansas Avenue, for whatever reason, whatever rock shelf they were blasting into from about 2019 until very recently, was tearing the snot out of our houses and causing severe damage, okay? I did not ask the quarry for millions of dollars. I said, hey, can you please just work with me to repair this? No, we're stuck bearing the burden of multiple thousands of dollars ourselves. We tried to get legal help. Of course, the quarry is like, hey, we're still within Bureau of Mines legal rights, so you got nothing. That's like, cool. So we're a family, a working family with kids that have to shoulder the burden of $40,000+ of foundation damage, and then, oh, by the way, our siding, because it no longer sits together anymore, had to be repaired and replaced. That's another $30,000. So we're in $70,000+ to fix our home as a military veteran family. So my thoughts here are, hey, this may have been appropriate in the past, but this is a residential neighborhood, and whatever type of blasting they're doing is causing significant damage. Secondly, I would like to address the helicopter flights also over the house. Yeah, if that's been approved by the quarry, it needs to stop because it is very disruptive. They're coming directly over our house. They're flying nap of the earth, which means they're running at the tree line. They're not at normal aviation heights. They're coming in right over our house. And it's usually at night. So yeah, it's very disruptive. But for us, for the safety and security of our home, for where we have decided to live, hey, our previous owners were horrified. They'd lived there for decades. That would have been the Spartan family. They lived there for decades. They called us up and said, hey, we have no idea what's going on with this blasting, but we're so sorry because we would have disclosed when we sold this house if we had thought something like this was going on. So even they noticed, hey, this is above and beyond what it's ever been in the last 30 years prior to the purchase of this home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. This time, would anyone else like to speak on this issue, against this issue? If you would approach the microphone, state your name and address, please.
My name's Mark Hopkins. I live at 12348 Kansas Avenue. And so I'm on top of the hill, a little bit to the east of where it looks like mainly they've been clearing off. And my big thing is it's a new house built 2018, 2019. A lot of concrete. And I've built houses all around Bonner Springs. I poured a lot of concrete over around Bonner Springs. This is the most cracks in concrete that I've never seen as many cracks in concrete and flat work as I've got in this deal. My problem with looking at foundation damage is I completely finished my downstairs space, so there's not much to really look at to even notice. But it's like if somebody came and dropped a stick of dynamite in your front yard, it shakes the shit out of you. And everybody would run to the outside to go, what in the world? When I first got into this house. But I've talked to Julia. We've talked about all the damage from her house. Other houses in there, I'm sure, have the same thing. And it didn't happen until they started pushing this way. The vibration, the dust, everything else that kind of comes across to us, it's always been after, we've talked to, I've sat on a couple meetings with, I think, the APAC guys. We never have gotten any phone calls. So we're supposed to get phone calls if they're going to, or emails, times that they're going to, dynamite or set that off. None of that. But I think we're all going to have the same issue. The dynamiting shakes your house. It'll rumble your house, and it has to do something with your foundations. All the way down that street, Josh has got a new house next to me, the guy up the street. Everybody's going to have these issues. And so for me to say, you guys know that this is going to be a problem, and we've already got problems, to approve these guys, it makes no sense. So if they do get approved, I don't know who is responsible, because I asked Mark this the other day. I go, if my house gets damaged because these guys are allowed to continue to dynamite close to us, somebody's responsible. And Mark thought, or he did say, it was the quarry's problem. If you saw Julia say she's dealt with the quarry for the problems and nothing was resolved. So where does this go from there if you guys are the ones that allow them to continue on? I'm sure there's more I can say, but anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak against this issue? If you would state your name and address, please, sir.
Yeah, my name is Josh Pittman, 12300 Kansas Avenue. I've owned my property since 2011. Worked to build my dream home in 2018, broke ground. Never heard any of the neighbors that was on there to be able to say anything about there being big blasting. I've been in Wyandotte County kind of my whole life, not really bothered to know what exactly they were doing. In the framing phase, I was in there plumbing it, and during that time, I literally thought it was an earthquake. I had my young son with me. He was outside, playing outside, and he ran inside because he had no idea what it was. Fast forward, moved in, everything else. My wife's a nurse. She works at night. It would blow, shake the entire house, and it would wake her up. I've had pictures fall off the wall. I know we're beating a dead horse with the amount of issues, but my patio has a crack in it. My back retaining wall has a crack in it. My front retaining wall, where my bushes and stuff is pulling away from the foundation. And not just that, the annoyance of it constantly going off. Even people when it happens, they freak out, like, whoa, what was that? And has there ever been any air quality tests that have gone on? Because I don't want to speak for him, but I know another neighbor that he can't even use his attic fan because the amount of dust that blows up into the air and just rains down, I'm assuming gravel, shale, rock, whatever it is, and it just dusts the trees. My entire house is gray, but has like a tan taupe look to it. My garage door, you try power washing it off, it's just constant dust everywhere. You better not open your doors because it's going to just constantly, I have dust constantly. It's a brand new home. So with that aspect on it, if this does pass or whatever, is there any sort of air quality test that can be done to be able to determine that from not affecting another nuisance?
Is there anyone else that would like to speak against this issue? If you would state your name and address, please.
My name is Cindy George, and I live at 12348 Kansas Avenue. New house, as you heard Mark say, he built it. Have an in-ground pool in the backyard. I'm sure there's damage being done to it. The concrete all around it is cracked. I, too, have experienced pictures falling off my wall. It set off the alarm on my Jeep when it was sitting outside one day. So the blasts are big. Now, we have met with the quarry over the phone. They came and put a seismograph on my property because they didn't realize that we were even there. So, excuse me, they put the seismograph there. I've seen no readings from it. So my request would be, I've also, the dust that floats over to Josh's house. We live on the hill, he lives in the valley. I can almost not see his house when the dust blows through after they blast. So it's very significant. So I think my request would be, if you're going to approve this, is for the city to put their own seismograph on my property and tell me what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would state your name and address, please.
Name is Mark Biesma. We're at 540 South 122nd Street. Across the street from the property in question, I can actually see the inside of the quarry from my back deck. I was notified, I don't believe I was notified by mail. It's actually notified by one of my neighbors, which is concerning because of how close I am. So I don't have too many notes, but here's what I have. I also mirror the concerns of the other neighbors. Some of the concerns that I have that have been mentioned include blasts that shake our house and windows, cracked foundations and slabs. We have a new house that sits on bedrock, so I understand concrete cracks, but I have concern over this since we are such a new house. Started foundations in September of last year. Other concerns include heavy morning equipment operations, sometimes 5:30 to 6 a.m. It actually wakes me up. Heavy dust concerns. It coats our house. We've got dark surfaces, and I've already had to power wash them multiple times. We have a well on our property, so concerns about future and current water quality. I've also witnessed the aircrafts above the site. I noticed in the document that you showed that the special use permit is for the well-being of the community, and this, in my opinion, would not be in favor of that. Therefore, I oppose the extension and the renewal of the special use permit.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? If you would state your name and address, please.
Kevin Strothman.
Could you turn on your microphone, sir?
Kevin Strathman, 12430 Kansas Avenue. So house actually sits probably an eighth of a mile up from Kansas Avenue. I've had to pier the foundation in the last 4 years twice, putting in over a dozen piers. We put in on the foundation on the corners or on the outside. Now the floor is caved in, so we've had to pier the flooring. There's been, the house has been there since '84. There was no issues prior to the last, we bought the property in 2020. No issues noted really prior to that, so this has all been new. The blasting, so I guess I have a couple issues here. My understanding is the notice was sent out to people within 200 feet. My house sits an eighth of a mile back. It shakes like you blasted dynamite out in the front yard. Scares the shit out of you. So I'm not sure we've got we got some of us here. I'm not sure you've got everybody, right? Because I'm not sure everybody knew about this proposal. So I've spent $30,000 on piers. This isn't a big deal, but I've got a rock gate at the front, right? It's got stone pillars. The guy built it, put concrete under it, rebarred it, went under the drive, said this will never settle. It's settled. He comes out and says there's no way this is possible, right? The one side is just leaning off to the side. So I have to get that piered now. So it's another couple grand. So, I'm sure they're going to say this isn't their issue. There's no way you can tell me we all have the coincidence that our foundations are falling apart, okay? So look, I'm willing, unlike everybody, I'm willing to trade the helicopters for the blasting. So I'd be fine if you approve this, no blasting, they can still land helicopters there. I'd be fine with that. The dust thing, I don't know if you guys have seen a video of the Dust Bowl before. I was out there a month after we bought this in 2020. There is a dust cloud just rolling up the drive. I've never seen anything like this. Everything is covered in dust. You can't park anything outside. It gets covered in dust. Look, I was told when we bought the property that, thank you. I was told when we bought the property that the quarry was about done blasting towards our house, okay? So I figure I got a couple years, we'll get through this. Had no idea I was going to have to spend all the money on piers. Now we're going to approve this. I want to keep going further and deeper. I don't know how in good conscience you guys approve this. This doesn't make any sense for the neighbors. I'm certain if you pulled further out, there's got to be more people affected by this. And I'd vote no. Oh, no on the blasting. I'm fine with the helicopters. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this issue? All right, at this time, are there any comments for the applicant?
Yes, they have a little presentation and some information to supply.
Okay.
And then probably responses to some of the issues.
Right.
Hello, I'm Dan Jones, and I'm the Environmental Permit Manager for APAC, Kansas. I'm going to do a couple quick introductions of people that we've got here, some of them that we'll probably have come up and speak on some of the items. We've got Kevin Fouts, our president, Kyle Garstang, our Vice President Operations Manager, Dennis Heaton, who is the quarry supervisor. We've got Bobby Hippenbecker. She's with our third-party blasting vibration company, and we've got John Olson here with Buckley Powder that is doing the blasting for us. I'm going to have Bobby come up and give a presentation on our blasting and our blasting results over the last few years for you. I do want to address a couple things. Mr. Zepps, thank you for your service. Do appreciate that. So his first comment was the trains coming from Boozy Cement. We are not the owners of the property, and so we do not have anything to do with Boozy Cement. Waste Management owns the property. We own the mineral rights, the right to mine there, but Waste Management is the owner of the property. So we have no control over the trains, scheduling of trains, and we are also do not have any knowledge of how Waste Management and Boozy Cement operate together and what kind of arrangements that they have together. Again, next I would like to address the helicopter situation. Once again, we own the mineral rights. We do not own the land. We do not have any type of contract with the Army or the Army Reserves. If there is a contract, that would be with Waste Management. We do not schedule their helicopter trips or their anything. The only conversations that we have with them is if they are coming out early during the day when they suspect that we might be blasting, they will call our supervisor, Mr. Heaton, and ask if we are going to be putting off a blast, putting off a shot during the day. So that is the only thing that we have. That is the only contact we have. They do not schedule anything with us. They don't contact us. They often show up without calling us and asking if we're blasting. We have seen them in the evenings. We have, as you heard earlier, we have a lot of people that live in this area and that are part of the community, and we see them at night, and we do not have anything to do with that. That being said, we are currently in negotiations with Waste Management to purchase that property from them. And we expect to have that completed soon, for sure by the end of the year. But we've been in negotiations with them for quite some time. That being said, if that happens, we would be most definitely happy to work with, number one, Boozy Cement on the train scheduling. I don't see why there's any reason to not have something out there on the website for Boozy Cement when they're going to have their trains, some type of notification. I'm sure that can be worked out. And, you know, we work a lot with various quarries and work a lot with emergency responders on doing rescue operations and all kinds of different things in the quarries. There is good reasons for practicing, and Kyle, I mean, I don't think we're okay with figuring out what this is and canceling that contract, right? If there is one?
Yes.
So we become the owners of the property, and we do not have a problem with telling the Army that, hey, listen, we can't practice helicopter operations over there at all. I will make one comment that Mr. Zepps did bring up. We do use drones to measure our stockpiles. We do have licensed pilot drones, and we do fly those during the daytime only. They are very quiet, they are very unnoticeable, and they measure our stockpile quantities for us, do mapping of the quarry property and stuff. So we would ask that if there's a stipulation about flying helicopters over there, that we still be able to use our quality control and our drone capabilities for doing that. That's the modern technology for measuring stockpiles and quantities of rock on there. Before I ask Bobby to come up and do her presentation on blast, last thing I want to address is the dust issues that have been brought up by several neighbors. We're regulated by 3 different governing bodies on dust emissions. Number 1 is the state of Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Number 2 is Wyandotte County. And number 3 is MSHA, the Mine Safety and Health Administration. We get inspected by the Kansas and Wyandotte County yearly, and they do dust testing, and they look at dust. That is one of the things that they are doing. MSHA, when they come out, 4 times a year they inspect us, and they also inspect us for dust emissions, and they measure that to ensure the health and safety of our employees and the surrounding public. There are limitations. You are allowed to have some dust come off your property, but I can't get into all the different methods of testing and stuff, but they do those tests out there when we're in operation. We have to be operating when they do those testing. So we do have that done. We also do internal testing when we change our configuration. Let's say we're changing some of our crushing equipment or traffic patterns. We do our own testing to ensure that the dust and noise and multiple other things are in compliance to ensure the safety and health of our employees and the surrounding community. With that being said, unless you guys have some questions about that, I'm going to ask Bobby to come up and do the blasting presentation.
I do have one, Dan. So can you elaborate on the trains a little bit, or just simply answer this? You guys don't work with Buzzy, and it's their trains, correct? I mean, you guys don't use the trains. Is that?
Absolutely not.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, we're neighbors with them. You know, our guys know some of their guys, and
They
our
may use
supervisors
your
knew each
material,
other.
but they don't.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
But we
Okay.
do not have anything to do with the train operations.
So your material's strictly by truck?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, Bobby.
Are we still in the open comment phase? Because you said a couple things that I would like to address before we get too far off.
Yeah, I mean, it's their turn, and we can, yeah.
Pick a spot and tell me when we're there.
Okay.
All right.
We'll
Do the
disappear from the
presentation
TV
then
for a
and
minute, but I'll put you right over here at the podium.
make note of your questions, Paul.
Get you.
Say again?
Make note of your questions. Make note of them.
Yeah, I mean, I know what my question is.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
No, I haven't. Oh, yeah, you sure can. Sorry. I'll have to get you up on the screen. Can you?
Am I good to go?
Yeah, okay, I think everybody can see that, and I think they've got you over here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, guys, I don't think I can show you guys.
Okay, I'm Bobby Hippenbecker with Vibratech Engineers, and I'm here to kind of give a recap of the seismograph activity and the data that we've gathered from the seismographs from January 1st, 2024 through February 10th, 2025. First, I want to give you a little bit of a background about Vibratech Engineers. We were founded in 1948. We've been in business for 76 years. We are an independent third party, and we are vibration consultants. We have 13 field offices with a regional office in St. Louis, and the St. Louis office services Kansas, Missouri, parts of Nebraska, southern Iowa, Arkansas, and southern Illinois. All of our seismographs that we put out in the field are installed and serviced by trained field technicians that go through a rigorous training program and certification. Our seismograph equipment is calibrated annually, and that just means that it's tested and it's calibrated to make sure that the readings are accurate, and that's done every year. Quarry personnel do not have access to the seismograph equipment or the data files from the seismographs that we put out in the field. This map gives an overview of all the blasting locations. All the red icons indicate the location of a blast that was done during the time period. So during the entire duration, there were 95 total blasts, and for those 95 blasts, there were 95 triggers at one or more of the seismographs. Looking at the map, the seismographs are indicated by a red icon, and the name of the location is listed next to or underneath that seismograph pin that's on the map. So there are 5 seismographs that are out surrounding all the blasting in the quarry.
The distances of the blasting to the closest and the furthest from any one of those 5 seismographs was, the closest blast was 894 feet, and the furthest blast away was 5,553 feet. So when we are talking about monitoring vibration, there are 2 measurements that we're plotting for each blast. One of those is called it's called particle velocity, and we're looking for the peak particle velocity during that blast. And you can see those particles moving, and what the seismograph does is it measures that particle, the speed of that particle, while the energy is passing through the ground. And that speed is called particle velocity, and as we measure that, we look at the peak speed of that particle from the time it moves away from its original resting place to when it comes back to its original resting place. And then the second measurement that we look at is frequency, and that's the number of complete cycles that particle cycles during 1 second. So a slower moving particle will linger longer than a faster moving particle. So a frequency is a cycle of motion, and the seismograph picks that up along with the speed of that cycle of motion. And those 2 factors together are what are the 2 factors that we look at when we look at what could cause structural damage from blasting. And so there's been a lot of studies done that have researched this over the years. All of the seismograph records and have to comply with this report of investigation called the United States Bureau of Mines, RI 8507, which was published in 1980. And this study is a combination of many studies over the years that were done by the United States Bureau of Mines. And they actually did surface mining, production blasting, and they monitored the damage at 76 residences, and they did 219 production blasts. And so they studied this, and they looked at what particle velocity and frequency combinations would cause damage, even threshold damage to minor damage to major damage. And so over the years, all of that was combined, and the outcome of that was the standard by which all the blasting is measured, and that is this United States Bureau of Mines safe blasting levels for vibrations near residential structures. And the blue line you see on there is the line where damage could potentially, threshold damage could occur. For drywall is the solid line, and then the lower line, the dotted line, is the plaster line. And you probably noticed that as the frequency increases, the limit increases for particle velocity. As the frequency is lower or on the lower end of the scale, the particle velocity limit is lower. So those 2 work hand in hand. A higher particle velocity at a high frequency would cause less damage than a lower particle velocity at a lower frequency. So the limits are put in place to protect plaster on lath kind of interiors as well as drywall interiors. And so the vibration standards here's just a summary, but human beings are very perceptible to vibration. Human beings can feel it at 0.02 inches per second, and that is about the lowest setting we can put in a seismograph. So any kind of motion that is in the environment, a human being will perceive that, just like our seismograph will. If you have a home that has plaster on lath, you have a 0.5 inches per second limit at the lower frequency levels. Drywall has a slightly higher 0.75 inches per second limit at the lower frequencies. And then just as a frame of reference, mortar joints and like concrete will have a 3 inches per second or a 10 inches per second respectively. So as the competency of the structural components increases, the limit of vibration that it can withstand also increases. Also, whenever a blast happens, there's the ground vibration, but what follows that is the air overpressure, and that's when that blast goes out into the environment, it forces the air out, and also that follows the ground vibration, and so you almost sometimes feel like two blasts, but it's really the same blast. The ground motion will come through, and then the air blast will come afterwards. And that also, we measure that as well. And that's measured in something called decibels. So to break a single pane of glass, it takes 160 decibels. Thunder at 1,000 feet away is 138 decibels. The state limit for safe air pressure is 133 decibels, which is the same as a 27 mile per hour wind. And then thunder at a half a mile is about 124 decibels. So, that kind of just gives you a frame of reference for how the air overpressure, some things we can relate to, but the state limit is 133 decibels. And so I'm just going to go through a brief summary of each of the 5 seismographs that we have around the quarry and kind of give you a quick overview of the limits for those, or the results that we gathered over the time period. So the one at 706 122nd Street, that one has been installed since 2018. Out of the 95 blasts, that one triggered 73 times. The closest blast was 929 feet. The furthest blast that triggered the seismograph was 3,412 feet. And then this is kind of how that data is plotted on that safe blasting limits that, that RI 8507, that's how all those blasts plot on there. So you can see they're all under the limits for safe blasting near residential structures. This next slide gives you an example of what our seismograph report looks like. So every time a blast occurs and it triggers the seismograph, this report is generated and sent to the quarry. And this is actually the highest reading that was gathered at that location. And if you look toward the middle gray box, that represents 36.67% of the United States Bureau of Mine limit. So that was the highest reading from that location, and it's at 36% of the limit for safe blasting. And then you can see all the channels on the seismograph are represented on the graph, as well as plotted on that U.S. Bureau of Mines limit. We also measure the air overpressure on every blast, and that solid line at the top of the graph is the state limit, and you can see that there were no blasts that exceeded that. And then this is a sample of the record for the highest air overpressure at the location, and that was 124.7 decibels. The next location is 12348 Kansas Avenue, and this one was installed in January of 2023. Out of the 95 blasts, this one triggered 56 times, and the closest blast was 923 feet from the seismograph to the blast, and the furthest was 4,327 feet. And this is that data plotted on the United States Bureau of Mines safe blasting levels graph. And then here's a sample of the highest reading we gathered at that location, and that one represents 12% of the United USBM limit. And as far as the air overpressure at that location, again, all the readings are well below the state limit. And the highest one is 124 decibels, and that was 1,000 feet from the house. The third monitoring location was installed in May of 2020. Again, that one triggered 56 times, 849 feet to 4,825 feet. from the blasting. And there's the data plotted on the graph for the United States Bureau of Mines. And the record that is the highest reading that was gathered at that location is 14.71% of the United States Bureau of Mines limit. As far as the air overpressure there, again, that one is, again, under the limit on all the blasts. And the highest reading there was 124 decibels at 1,112 feet. The Camp Nash seismograph, that was installed in May of 2024. There were 67 blasts since it was installed, and 39 of those actually triggered the seismograph. So the closest blast was at 1,198 feet. The furthest was 5,248 feet. There's the data plotted on the United States Bureau of Mines graph. And this is the highest reading, the record from that reading, and that was at 15.94% of the limit for safe blasting. The air overpressure readings were all under the limit, and the highest air overpressure reading at that location was 124.7 decibels, and that was at 1,789 feet. And then the final seismograph is on the west side of the quarry, and that was installed in 2019. There were 56 total triggers at that location, distances from 1,495 feet to 5,553 feet. And there's the data plotted on the Bureau of Mines chart. The next record shows the seismograph readings from that location that were the highest reading gathered at that location, and that was at 19.79% of the USBM limit. The air overpressure readings from that location are under the limit, and the highest reading at that location was 117.6 decibels at 1,720 feet. So that summarizes all the data from the seismographs over this period. And I know some of the residents expressed concerns about vibrations. I mean, it is known that when ground vibration and air overpressure, going out into the environment, the structures may shake. You may be feeling shaking or things rumbling inside or outside the house. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's causing damage. The science and the data don't have there's nothing in the science or the data that tells us that any of the blasting caused damage. It does cause rattling of contents, and it does cause annoyance, and it does cause startle. Everybody that lives near a quarry or is involved in blasting knows that all of these are unfortunate occurrences that happen when you're near a quarry and they're blasting. So we're not trying to say that it doesn't happen or it isn't inconvenient or unsettling, but it is something that can happen when you're near blasting. And then just some other things, the ground vibrations are measured in 1,000th of an inch, so they're very, precise. Our seismographs are measuring everything very, very, to the width of a piece of paper, a sheet of paper. That's how accurate the readings are from the seismographs. And just to summarize, houses do have other kinds of factors that cause damage: temperature changes, humidity changes, wind gusts that are all caused by Mother Nature. That none of us have control over those. And then man-made effects: people moving in the house, people jumping, slamming doors. Those kind of things can also, cause a response from the structure that can sometimes exceed what a blast can do. Nearby traffic can also cause rattling of windows, and then just loud music, stereo, sound systems. So there's other things that can impact the structure as well. But the blasting, from the data that we've gathered from the science that is in place, there isn't any indication that there would be any damage caused by the blasting.
Thank you. Is there more to the applicants? Okay.
I have a question.
Sorry.
Okay. Do they change the amount of explosives or method on each blast, or is it always a common blast?
John, you want to come up and talk about that?
Can you ask it again, please?
Do you use the same amount of explosive on each blast, or does it vary?
Excuse me. It does vary. We have currently 4 different ledges that we're blasting, all of various depths. The deepest one at the moment is 23 foot, the shallowest being 5 foot. Obviously, we are putting a different amount of explosives in a 23-foot hole than we are from a 5-foot hole. So yes, they do vary. And so the depth of the hole changes, and then also we do try to maximize the size of a blast. We don't go over, I'm going to say 18,000 pounds of explosives in a given blast. Our trucks don't hold more than that. We've blasted up to 18,000 pounds. We can't do any more than that in a given blast. So. It for now. You want to?
Unless you want to say something about shot designs and that we monitor the blast and design shots.
Yeah, I mean so in blasting math, everything boils down to 8 milliseconds is kind of the magic number. We can have an 18,000 pound blast. We can have a 2,000 pound blast. It boils down to how many holes are going off at the same time, and that's an 8 millisecond separation. When the holes, this is from people much smarter than me, but this is the science proves that if you have one hole going off and the next hole going off, that causes interference. That interference is actually good. It disrupts the ground waves. But in order to have that interference, you have to have your holes going off 8 milliseconds apart or greater. If it's within that 8 milliseconds, it's considered one hole per delay. So we try to time all of our blasts to that single hole per delay. And again, we have 20-foot ledges and we have 5-foot ledges. We may have the shorter ledges. You may have 4 holes going off at the same time, 4 holes per delay, and that's going to equal about 5 pounds per hole. So you're going to have 20 pounds going off at a given time. Or in a 20-foot ledge, and if you try to get that down to 1 hole per delay, you're talking in that one you're going to have about 100 pounds per delay per hole. So it's the shorter the ledge, in essence, you are going to have more holes going off at one time, but the pounds aren't there either as well as a deeper ledge would be. We try to we do all of these shot layouts. All of the designing comes from us. APAC uses contract drilling, so we come in and we design all the blasts. We want to do very simple straight line blasting. It's the easiest for timing to keep those holes per delay. We have recognized, obviously, we are progressing to the north. There's neighbors to the northwest, north, northeast. We do try to time blast in essence, to get vibrations going away from wherever the closest structure is on that given blast. Obviously in the pit, east to west, that does vary. So we do try to time those blasts so the vibrations are going away from the closest structure. I think that's about all I have at the moment. Maybe I'll follow up comments later, but.
Thank you.
Leave on.
1 second. Mark, can we take a brief recess just for, in the middle of the public hearing? Is that fine for like a 5 minute?
If you need to, we can, sure.
You all good with?
Sure.
I just need to get up and
Take a couple?
stretch and
Sure.
refill my drink.
We're going to take a couple minute recess.
Yep, thank you.
You need about 5 minutes? 5?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good. Yeah, I'll do that.
I moved over here so I could check as well. So I don't know. I said I moved over here so I could check as well. So I can see a bunch of videos.
It'll probably be in your inbox before tomorrow morning. Now, literally, as I was walking out the door, I made some final changes and save, grab the pen drive. Unfortunately, the thing I teach to my students is always do a tech rehearsal on the equipment that you have to bring on. You guys weren't here early enough for me to do that.
Come down and do it. Sure. Working and she's like, "No, we're okay." And yeah.
I grimace at you both. Hey, one way or another, sorry, my knife got. One way or another, 8:30, I gotta go.
I got you. I got you. We're trying.
Otherwise, my daughter is stuck at Shields all by herself. That gets me in trouble.
Got a nice fireplace, Larry. Don't say anything, everybody can hear you. She jumped off camera for a minute. She probably needed a break too. Greg's probably mad at me because I went to the bathroom. He couldn't.